From Texas, Mr. Sessions is recognized.
Madam Chairman, thank you very much, and thank you to this hearing. I think it's well worth our time, and important questions are being asked. I want to ask the entire panel, but General, I'll probably focus on perhaps you first. I'd like to move down the pathway that Mr. DeSagne was moving, and that is what I would call lessons learned. Can you tell me how many prosecutions, federal prosecutions, have occurred in the last 5 years on these issues of cybersecurity?
Sir, I don't have that information at my disposal at the moment. I'd be happy to take that question for the record or defer to Assistant Director Vorndran.
Director?
Sir, I can't answer that question with great fidelity. I can certainly take it back and give you a very precise answer, but it's a threat that we've worked on continuously for 5 years and would have accurate data to support it.
Yeah. Well, the reason why I asked the question is, just like Mr. DeSagne said, we are interested in what are lessons that are learned from the investigations that you do. And we're interested in knowing how best, there was a question that was asked earlier about new laws, but I think we ought to know the effectiveness of what we're doing. We're spending a lot of time, a lot of resources. It's a national priority that we're engaged in. Which one of you should I look for getting that answer from?
I'd be happy to take the lead on that, sir.
Thank you, sir. We will write you a letter to help you. Being up here is a whole lot of fun, but we'll follow up and write you a letter requesting that information. We'll include the chairwoman in that request. So for any one of you, you could probably dissect the marketplace problems into about 15 different areas. I'm going to put it simply today in one or two ways, and that is malware, which is, this malicious use of the computers. The other might be computer-induced, where someone broke in necessarily, maybe from an employee or found out about something. But as it relates to a employer and related to how the employer has protected their own data and their employees, are you finding, or what would the discussion be of what I would call a company-induced breach? In other words, not related to something else. Somebody was not doing the right thing. Someone had a breach of their employee who gave this. How would you respond to that to let us know about the size or scope of that threat?
So preliminary estimates, or the best data we have that drives our estimates, are that 90% of cyber breaches on end user equipment or infrastructure for a company are induced by human error. But I think where we see an intersection is between what we would call an insider threat and the information that an insider has access to that's trying to sell to a nation state or somebody trying to get economic gain, and the overlap between that set of information, intellectual property, whatever have you, and what hackers are also going after. And we see a core intersection between insider threat, hacker breaches, going after the same thing. We've seen it in COVID research to advanced defibrillators, aerospace engineering designs by subject for human penetrations, corruption insiders. We've seen it across a gamut, so we do see a very, very keen intersection right there.
So in other words, your investigators, once they were able to effectively get their handle around the problem and look at how things happened, you're finding that employees and systems within companies many times as the large breach. So one of the questions I'd like to ask, General, is then if you have this information about how many people then were prosecuted, what I would call on an internal basis by their company. One of the questions why we asked this, and one of my colleagues previously asked, is are there new laws? Years ago, we were really concerned with making sure that someone could report their information without being held liable necessarily. In other words, to share information about the things that were happening, which would help everybody. But in this case, if a major part of, or as you allude to, some part of the failure is with an employee, for us to know more about those employees. Did they come from a certain pool, perhaps a school, MBA program where they had been involved, perhaps an area of the country, perhaps on something, whatever your investigation might do. If you could give us any clue about at least
Sure, we'd be
directions.
happy to take that question and provide a fulsome response. I would say that the 90% figure that Assistant Director Vorndran cited is one that I cite as well. But the vast majority of those people don't intend to make those mistakes. They simply make them, right? They're not well equipped to make an appropriate choice at the moment. They might click on a link thinking it's one thing, it's provided by someone who's phishing them, and so on and so forth. Yeah. And so we can give you very great clarity about the percentage of things attributable to a human being and those that were malicious in their intent.
Yeah, and I think that's important. I'm not an athlete, I'm a football player, and I threw interceptions that didn't mean to, but I had to correct my behavior in some circumstances to understand what happened when I threw the pass. And I think if business understands more clearly the huge part that their employees play, and I know we talk about it in the private sector a lot and in the government a lot, but I think that focus off that activity would help me. And I appreciate you being here. Each of you, this is a serious attempt. I will tell you it's just a byline, but in 1985, when I was in New Jersey at what might be an old Bell Labs, I was on the original Bell Labs team that invented what might be ISDN or broadband, what became broadband. And we began gathering data and information that would be in a switch, which would then gather data and information about how this data stream would be included in the Bureau. My father was the director at the time, and the Bureau was very concerned about what was being built in as information that could be gleaned on both sides of that, not only from a perpetrator, but also from a company to gather information about that. And I might ask, not now, but I might ask at some point for you, Assistant Director, about your viewpoint of gathering data and information, whether that has stayed up with time that would aid and help not just law enforcement, but the managing companies in their effort.
Sir, I'd be happy to have that conversation with you at any time.
Great, thank you very much. Madam Chairman.
Gentleman, time
Thank
has
you.
expired.